For this conversation, Sue Lee Ko from Rhode Island Commerce will be speaking with John Connell at modulateai.ai, and I will stop sharing and pass it over to both of you. If you could introduce yourselves. Once again, if you have questions for our panelists, please drop them in the chat. At some point, we might ask you all to unmute and just join the conversation.
Great. Well, thanks, Amy, for that. So Suli Ku from Rhode Island Commerce. I'm the VP of Business Development. So happy to concentrate on technology and finance, and really excited about what esports could do for Rhode Island, New England, and the region. I am so looking forward to our conversation today because this is really, tuning out like the third installment of esports that we've done. Super successful series with Venture Cafe. So thank you for letting me do this conversation here. As someone who's really super passionate about equitable, positive, safe digital spaces, I'm really looking forward to my conversation with John Connell. So John is with modulate.ai. And John, if you could introduce yourself and modulate.ai, that would be super.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Suli, for the intro there. Very excited to be on the call with everybody. A little bit of background. I serve as head of business development at Modulate. Prior to joining the team, I had spent some time in venture capital where I was supporting early stage companies, and at Microsoft where I had touch points with a number of acquisitions ranging from Minecraft to Mixer, Havoc, LinkedIn. Also had touch points with initiatives relating to mixed reality, productivity, and gaming. As for Modulate, we are a platform, voice first, that offers a safer and more immersive voice first experience. So that really comes forth in two different products. We have VoiceWare, which is our voice skin product that empowers gamers to become those characters they want to be identifying with within their online community. And then we have TalksMod, our voice moderation tool that allows for developers to keep their players safe through proactively addressing bad behavior in game and sort of setting the established boundaries, if you will, for what they perceive their community wants, and even coming up with various ways of sort of interacting with those communities to ensure that everyone is having a positive experience. So for us, fostering inclusive communities, freedom of expression, speech, those are all topics that are very much top of mind for the way that we think about the world on this end, and just what the future of sort of online identity looks like to us at Modulate.
Yeah, so I'm reading this right off of modulate.ai's website. So Modulate AI's mission is to enable a safer, more immersive voice chat experience. And I'm going to go right to positivity first. So going to the voice skin product, I remember MP3 skins. What are voice skins?
Absolutely. So I think probably the best way to get a sense of what voice skins are might be a little bit of a demo. If you guys will give me just a second, I'll see if I can turn this on.
Can you hear me on that end by any chance? As more of a deeper tonal voice, what you'll catch that is rather nuanced or different from more of the traditional voice filter is that we are following the emotional trajectory of your voice, literally transforming on a phoneme level how it is that you're actually sounding in real time.
So what that means is that you can come across from one gender to the other, from one type of character trait to another. In the portfolio, we have more of the swamp creature effects that you could even apply if you're so inclined. More of the traditional filters as well. If you're interested in, the classic chipmunk or robot filter, right? But the underlying
tech is fundamentally different. If you can hear me as John now, give me a thumbs up just to make sure. Okay, good. The underlying technology is rather nuanced relative to kind of these overlays that you come across with old school last gen voice filters. We're using machine learning techniques. If you're familiar with adversarial training or generative adversarial training, neural networks to basically reimagine the way that one voice in one sort of dialect or intonation, prosody, sentiment, the whole range of what you can convey with your voice is completely taken into that character. And so when it kind of moves to whether it's, you know, an online gaming community or a D&D community or just, you know, a casual Zoom call with grandma to give her a nice little shock on the side, voice skins in particular have some really interesting applications. Especially as we're seeing more and more of what we perceive as who we are moving towards that digital realm where avatars are becoming more of a prolific theme, and kind of the nuance of the individual is, you know, cross-platform. It's not just IRL anymore. Your digital first interactions are arguably as important to you and as meaningful on a fulfillment basis as kind of your daily conversations with folks just on the street. I'll pause there. That's
Yeah. No, that's great because I'm seeing some comments in the chat, and I think a next good question would be, you know, we talked about both safety and protecting anonymity, protecting identity and having safer environments, and also having fun. So could you talk a little bit about, you know, some of the value and the use of the skins that you've seen, and then I know, Amy, we have a little poll question, so a little fun.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, John.
When we think about online engagement here, you know, it's fundamentally different than the physical world, as was previously mentioned. But the applications, if you will, really look towards the communities, right? What are the norms that we have for interaction today, both online and offline? And sort of the ability to represent a character is one thing, and sort of play as that chosen identity online. But then when you think about underrepresented individuals in gaming that might be facing, whether that's sexual harassment or grooming activity or racial slurs that are unwarranted, and frankly toxic to the actual experience itself, voice skins allow for you to not only express your identity but also protect your identity. And that sort of goes hand in hand with sort of the other product in the portfolio, ToxMod, where we're really thinking about giving those developers those tools to ensure the safety boundaries of their community. So in real time, when you hear that type of bad activity that's happening, are there ways that we can allow for developers to now address it? Whether that is real-time muting based upon certain terminology. For example, if the N-word is used, that's one that is mostly universally unacceptable. And folks, as developers, will generally say, you know, we need to do something about that. So allowing for folks to, whether that's flag these bad words that are happening or bad activity in general based upon the text context itself, based upon the sentiment, based upon the scenario, the metadata tagging of what is happening within a given conversation session, you know, factoring in things like maybe I just got killed in a game and I'm playing with a group of friends and I'm getting upset. Probably not as steep of a, you know, hindrance to the greater online community as if perhaps I was speaking with a group of strangers and I'm about to, you know, rage on someone else for tagging me. And maybe I need a pop-up that just reminds me, hey, you know, I can tell your voice is getting raised. Do you mean to say these things? And even gentle reminders to keep people conscious and mindful about what it is that they're saying can in many ways impact the community of a given game. When you think about, you know, why is it that people will leave games? One of the biggest factors for churn today is actually toxic behavior. Sexual harassment in particular is something that has led to more than a 20% drop off from a number of AAA titles that we've spoken with in terms of active usage. So if you can prevent gamers from leaving platform because of bad activity that's happening, that's really quite powerful. So it sort of stems across the spectrum of, on one angle, let's give players the best experience that they can, you know, and improve sort of the bandwidth on digital assets they already have access to beyond skins to now include voice as a core feature of that point of interaction, including loop back in the ear so that you can hear what you're saying as you're saying it. But then also giving the teams, the communities, and sort of the moderators the ability to also put some guardrails around what is considered appropriate and what is considered unacceptable for a given community.
And we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but my understanding is that those guardrails are also something that you work on with each community that you that is a customer. So the guardrails on one community may be, you know, a little flag, and the guardrails on another in another community may be an actual person coming on, and then then another, now I'm taking your shtick away from you.
No, you're on fire over there, Suli. You've got it. Yeah. No, I'll let you give the sales pitch. You're totally on point.
Okay,
for a
fabulous.
game like a Call of Duty. They're probably having violent activity on the regular, and you don't necessarily want to prevent that, because that is one of the core purpose tenets of that outlet, right? Relative to maybe a Roblox or a Minecraft, where the interactions are maybe more wholesome. And so your threshold detection on swear words, on what is acceptable range preferences in terms of how people are interacting with one another, you want to have a very different set of expectations and standards there, right? Than maybe in Call of Duty, where you might be more lenient on certain type of activity.
Right. We have some implementation questions, which is awesome that there is people on the line that are interested. I wanted to get that poll up, Amy. So if you do see yourself, using something like voice skins, how would you use these voice skins? And we'll take just a minute to fill out that poll. And thank you so much. Remember to press that submit button when you've done that. And then Amy,
just
we're
taking
going to
a look at the chat here. This is great.
Yeah, right. I could. The first thing I thought about, John, was like this whole, can you make me max headroom, right? And then you and I talked about like, wow, I remember when MP3 skins came out, how it was like,
oh man, don't get me started on Winamp. Here we go. Yeah.
Right. It's like, so now with voices, I'm like, I can imagine the next movie coming out or the next game coming out and wanting to do that. But then I also think about it, the identity piece, where like, I don't really like to hear my own voice in a recording. And how can modulate.ai also help me feel like my voice is a better embodiment of who I am? And is that something that people have talked to you about?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think each community that we've spoken with, and this ranges to your point on applications, whether you're talking to a gaming first community, the transgender community, the Dungeons and Dragons community, all of these different areas of application are really quite eye-opening. And we've seen kind of new opportunities hit our radar every day. Even when you think about more professional use cases for interviewing or for call centers, there are a number of enterprise-oriented apps that we could very well be going at. Today, we're looking at it from the angle of let's try and impact as many people as possible in as positive way as possible. And so for us, our beachhead today is the gaming space, but keeping our eyes and ears to the ground on where else are we seeing interest. In academia is another area as well. Where there's been some really interesting testing. We've done some partnership with a couple of higher education institutions, but the sky is the limit. When I think about how it is that artificial intelligence is being implemented in the real world today, there's so many different outlets across the landscape, and within voice specifically, the identity piece I think is core first and foremost here. And so next generation questions are, well, how is it that you can more actively engage with the voice that you most closely identify with in the future? Not just through your digital environment, but maybe there are ways to incorporate these types of technologies more purposefully in the real world as well. And then we get talking, sci-fi, Arthur Clarke and kind of the future forward Isaac Asimov theories there. But there's quite a few exciting paths that I think this technology is transitioning towards today.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much for talking to us in the context of gaming. We have a little bit of a pivot, John, because people want to know how modulate.ai is making money. So
yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the business models?
Absolutely. Yeah. So two very different business models for the voice skins as well as for the ToxMod product. On the voice skin side, the way that we look at it is as a partnership with the studio or the publisher that we're working with. And so what that means for us is a rev share component for folks that are interested in basically installing voice skins into their marketplace. So if you think about the digital asset economy, for those that might be familiar with the Engines of the world or, the Fortes of the world, even the old, Diablo 2 auction house, right? Before blockchain became a part of the conversation here. The missing gap historically for really customizing your character has been voice. which is really quite fascinating. You know, you can make your character look however you want. You can apply weapons and armor and different types of temporal cosmetics. And what we're trying to do is really introduce to the world, on one angle, on the revenue monetization side of the flywheel, a new class of digital asset that is the voice skin. And so when you sort of align that, whether that's with particular characters, as we were mentioning earlier, or even celebrities, you sort of start to develop a really interesting marketplace of potential skins. So it starts with, a studio here and a studio there, and a couple of voice actors here and there. We actually just finalized a voice with an exciting skin, a Star Trek character that will soon go named. But there are, ways of sort of pooling these voices together within a marketplace model that allows for you to take that identity with you from one game to another, or even within the band of a game, depending upon what exclusivity agreements on our end look like. So rev share for the voice skins is sort of the core application that we're looking towards. As for ToxMod, that's usage based. So the tech itself, the ML architecture, is really hitting it out of the ballpark when it comes to resource constrained environments. One of the co-founders, Carter, he was previously at JPL over at Stanford, which they do rocket science, basically, right? He was building machine learning models that were on the recent rover, Perseverance, I believe it was, on Mars. And really the only more constrained environment I can think of top of mind than gaming is, a rocket ship. Good luck, right? And so kind of where we're thinking about the tech from that angle as well. If this is moderation and this is basically capturing the audio from the mic and evaluating what's happening there, we also have a VAD, or voice activity detector, that keeps us up to date with who's talking and who's not. We're only capturing the audio when people are talking. It's a usage-based pricing model on that front. So as audio is digested, we have a model on the back end that will sort of identify what's being said, how it's being said, what context is it being said, and then being able to then apply pricing accordingly, depending upon kind of the customer, the size, the batching, MAUs and DAUs, sort of their install base, if you will. It's interesting. We thought a couple of different avenues there, but always keen and open on innovation. This is very much a nascent emerging space, and we have found with new partners there are new requirements or new areas of interest to sort of evolve the business model. But today it's usage-based pricing with ToxMod. It's rev share based pricing with voice skins is sort of where we've landed. Hello? Uh-oh. Did I freeze or did Suli freeze?
It's not you. You sound fine.
All right, no worries.
I'm
going to take
then she must have been cut off. There's a couple of questions in the chat. So can we talk about the kind of what makes Modulate.ai different from some of the other, the kind of just the cheaper apps that are out there that change your voice? And then also actually, let's start there, and then I'll get.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. When you look towards sort of I call it the old school voice filter tech, you have what are generally frequency pitch changes or overlays, EQ overlays to a given voice. The model that we built will take your voice at a phoneme level, and it will sort of evolve it, change it from what it is that you're saying and how it is that you're saying it today in your native voice to that of an entirely different speaker. So the output is fundamentally different because of the process that the triaging, if you will, between the machine learning models that takes the voice as an input and then digests it to then really apply a completely different output that is rather novel relative to old school solutions. Doing this real time is where the complexity arises, right? There have been a number of interesting text-to-speech solutions out there that have been able to do this post-processing, which means that you can wait a minute or two and then have sort of a given character's voice overlaid on text. But real-time voice-to-voice synthesis is still very much an emerging space. And it's interesting, I had looked quite intently across the landscape of what was happening in sort of text-to-speech and how it was being applied. And when I ran into Modulate, realized pretty quickly there's something special here that is happening on the voice-to-voice side. And so,
yeah, is there any plans for Modulate to do a text-to-speech option so that you know, people with hearing difficulties or disabilities can also engage in that way?
great question. Yeah, the actual underlying tech is fundamentally different than text to speech, which a lot of people don't realize. So when you think about the data that we're training on, when you think about the architecture itself, the way in which the models work, they're entirely different than some of your traditional text to speech approach. So it's a great problem statement, I think, to be going after, but today not exactly a priority, given that our focus is on real-time voice-to-voice versus text to speech.
Yeah. Hi. The whole household here has lost internet. So I am using cellular. Thank goodness for internet, for technology backups. So thanks so much, John. And thank you, Amy, for taking over for a second. If we haven't gone over kind of the implementation, John, I know that there was a question around, how the technology is implemented. I think we can take that question maybe from two perspectives. And if the person that asked the question wants to jump in, definitely. I can think about that as what does the technology look like just the tech stack, and then the second piece and how it's machine learning. So how are you feeding the beast, so to speak?
Absolutely.
And then second is if it were, for example, Venture Cafe, and they were running an event and they wanted to implement Modulate.ai, kind of what would that look like? I hope that I'm capturing what folks were asking in the chat, and if you could take those, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try not to be too technical here, just for sake of running over, the engineer's foots,
Yeah.
if you will. But the text itself is basically bottled up in our SDK. And so that is deployed client side.
Okay.
And there are a series of triaging models that will take that ingested data on the client and sort of migrate it up to the server. And depending upon what the customer's requests are, we can deploy more local, we can deploy on-prem, online. It sort of depends upon where's the best place to be allocating resourcing for the models. To your second question, sort of the Venture Cafe concept, would love to see if maybe at some point in time, if folks are interested, we could even have kind of an open house, or maybe even a video session where folks come and go and we could chit chat in different voice skins and maybe even taste test some of what's happening there. Right now, there isn't necessarily a consumer product that's out there. We do have a couple hundred testers that have been able to help us out, just thinking through some of the edge cases and nuances with different languages and tonalities. The model today is B2B2C, right? So we're selling into studios to then sell to customers. But with Venture Cafe in particular, I'm sure we could set something up to give people a taste test of what it's like to be using these voice skins.
Well, that is a great segue, because we do have there's two things I think I'm thinking of based on our conversation. One is we are planning our next esports event to be really about how do we help educate parents and other people that don't understand these gaming and esports environments, to understand what we're doing to make these positive and safe environments. We'd love to have you back. I know we were also talking to the AnyKey Foundation about their kind of good behavior badge that they use, and other companies that are helping to coach and create positive environments for people first getting into esports. We'd love to have you back for that. And then second, I know Amy, you want to kind of have like a mini esports event, and that might be a great kind of open house where people can come in and try the Modulate.ai product, John. So I'd love to work on that as well.
That would be fantastic. I took a quick look at AnyKey. Their Good Luck Have Fun pledge is fantastic. I love the concept of getting people on board, saying we're going to represent good behavior online and sort of serve as these digital role models for everybody else. That's what we need, frankly, are for folks to be actively speaking up, taking some sense of, moral stance can be ambiguous depending upon who you talk to, but I'm a fan of sort of the positive vibes that are coming off there from AnyKey. Would love to have a conversation in that regard.
Yeah, and they're sorry that they couldn't be here today, but we'll get us all on another panel very, very soon. I want to have just a couple minutes for us to have a question, if there's someone that would like to unmute themselves and ask a question, and then I'm going to have Amy, if you could put in the chat kind of some of the events that we've talked about in these last few minutes. And I don't know if we've talked about the Ritual Motion Collegiate fair, the Esports college fair that they're putting on, but if we could put a link for that in as well, that would be great.
But Evelyn can redrop that so that people who weren't here.
Rock and roll. Yeah, I know, Kravitz, that you had maybe one or two questions that I didn't have a chance to ask. So if you wanted to unmute yourself and ask, that would be great. If someone else has a question, I think we can take one question.
I did see Kravitz's question in the chat over here. He was asking, what is the advantage of using moderation software over having 20 human moderators in chat? Fantastic question. And I think that comes in a couple of different forms. The first being allowing for autonomous activity over time, once you sort of have collected this moderation data of understanding what is right versus wrong for your community, based upon the thresholds that you set and your level of acceptability for each of these different types of breaches, dependent upon what toxic bad behavior you're referring to, right? As that data is digested and understood by our engines, we can also look towards autonomous moderation. So being able to apply the same types of actions that humans in the loop would be doing on more of a manageable basis. So to the second point there, it's around cost. You're now allowing for moderators to manage a process instead of having to manage each and every last instance of bad behavior that's happening within your game. And that, for, I think, AAA studios as well as moderators today as a tool to be leveraging within their communities has been found to be quite helpful.
Yeah, so that's effectivity and cost, as you're saying, John. Mm-hmm. So to prompt you on the effectivity part, yesterday we were talking about how, we know that there's an X percentage, was it 18%, of incidents are actually reported. So it's probably like a 5X. So if we can increase, the number of people that have positive experiences because they feel like that's being moderated because everything is being listened to me, that's a positive.
That's right.
That's the effectivity part.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you can suddenly have a flashlight that shows you the rest of the darkness, you've got visibility on this little bright light in front of you. And now suddenly we open up the doors to everything else that is happening in your game. That is visibility you didn't previously have as a moderation team. And, when you think about your kids today, you probably don't want your kids going to a bar or a casino, right? You have bouncers that prevent kids from entering these facilities. Online, there aren't necessarily the same types of guardrails to protect kids from bad behavior or inappropriate activity that's happening. And it is kind of up to the individual to, experience what he or she is so willing to participate in online. But developers of communities sort of have a moral responsibility there, right? To ensure that their community is safe for the participants, whoever their participants are. And so giving them the tools to determine how best to enact some of these services and ideals are things that are really quite important to the Modulate vision.
That's wonderful. Thanks so much closing that out and for taking that question, John. And thanks so much for your time. I want to stick to our time, Amy. I think we're right at 1 o'clock. And thank John for coming on, and looking forward to the next time. And all of
Likewise.
those
Yeah.
questions that we haven't answered, we'll absolutely get to you. If anyone is interested in esports, any of the speakers today, or just participating in general, feel free to contact me or the Venture Cafe folks. We will get you plugged in. Amy, back to you.
Thank you, everybody. This has been fascinating, and I really appreciate all of our speakers today, and definitely want to do one more shout out for next week with AR, VR, 3D simulation and training. We're starting early next week, so remember 10:30 with a workshop, and then we'll kick off again at 11:30. But if there's no other questions, I am going to leave the chat open, but I'm going to cut the recording, and if you want to stick around and talk for a few minutes, you can, and you can always pull links then from the chat box. All right. Thank you, everyone.